Wasn't that awesome? Woo! All right, guys, let's welcome to the stage the writer-director of Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn. The casting director of Guardians of the Galaxy in, I think, every Marvel movie, Sarah Haley Finn. And the producer and head of Marvel, Kevin Feige. You want to hear something weird? I don't think I watched a good portion, about a third of the movie from the back because I got here early, and it was really fun to see it again because I haven't seen it for a long time. But I don't know if I've ever seen it with an audience in 2D ever.
I was going to ask you because I've seen this so many times, and I have the 3D Blu-ray at home. I don't think I've ever watched it in 2D. Do you have a preference?
Well, you know, at the time I had a 3D preference, but I don't know, it played really well like that. So I like it, I really do like it, but I think you gotta see it both ways, and you gotta pay full price ticket both times. No, I like it.
Well, before we get to it, I was just thinking at the end, was that you dancing as Baby Groot?
Yeah, that's me dancing as Baby Groot.
So, all right, so back up. So where we left you guys last week was after the Avengers. So Kevin, you guys are coming off the Avengers, which was your biggest hit ever, and then you made sequels to your original series of films. They were way bigger than the first ones. Do you feel like that bought you guys like taking a shot like this for something that was a property that most people hadn't heard of? And
well, we did Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World, and Captain America: The Winter Soldier all came out before Guardians of the Galaxy, but none of them have come out when we had decided to make this film. We, as I've talked about in other weeks, didn't want to just be the Iron Man studio. Then we didn't want to be just the Avengers studio. We always wanted to keep doing something new. And even just before Avengers came out, we were thinking about what would be new, and this notion of doing a space movie. There weren't any Star Wars movies on the horizons back then, and it was the idea of doing a big space movie was super exciting to us. And there was a relatively recent run in the books with the craziest makeup of characters ever, which is basically what you see in this film. So we knew that Guardians is what we wanted to try in Phase 2. James actually flew out to the set of Iron Man 3 in Wilmington, North Carolina, for the first and final meeting with me, I think.
Yeah, that was the only meeting I had with you at all.
Yeah. And
we had met before.
This is the second time. So that was the idea, was to, we have enough clout that a studio's letting us do this movie, and they go, what is it? And we go, it's a space and a raccoon and a tree, and they go, okay. And then we found James.
James, did you know the comic?
I did. I'm a huge comic book fan, so I had read all the comics, and I was actually a little more familiar with the previous Guardians of the Galaxy than I was with the Abnett Lanning run. But I had read the Abnett Lanning run, and I really, when they told me they were doing Guardians of the Galaxy, and they said, okay, and this is who the lineup is going to be, that's kind of where it started. And I thought, when I sat in the room, this was before I had met with Kevin about it, I sat there with Jonathan Schwartz and Jeremy Latcham, who were the co-producers on the movie. And I walked out of the room and I thought, that's a terrible idea. That's, it's going to be like Bugs Bunny in the middle of the Avengers. And I got stuck in traffic because you were down in Manhattan Beach. And as I was in traffic on the ride home, I suddenly, I was kind of thinking about, well, how could that possibly work? How could it work? And I thought the way it works for me is you ground the raccoon. And I said, if the raccoon, and this is true, if the raccoon is the saddest creature in the entire world, and he's Frankenstein's monster, basically, which is what he is, that would give me a place to start from, to ground it, to give it some grounding, so that I could believe in and go on a ride with these characters. And that, to me, has been where it all started, was with Rocket and creating this character. Well, I've come to love as these guys know, and Kevin definitely knows, in a strange way. He's like my son, and he's and I think that everything kind of grew up around that then. But I also thought, and as I was driving home, that when I was a little kid, I remembered what Star Wars made me feel like when that movie came out when I was 10 years old or 9 years old, and I just couldn't believe it. I hadn't seen the movie yet, but I remembered what it made me feel like. I remember seeing People magazine with Chewbacca, C-3PO, and just freaking out that this could be the greatest thing of all time. And I knew that I wanted to make a movie that was like Star Wars, but that could make people, both adults and kids, feel like Star Wars made them feel. That would give them that magical feeling of these alien other creatures and something truly colorful and magnificent. And that's another big part of where I started.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling them before when I introduced the movie that, like, you know, I grew up on all those movies, and I see everything. You go to the movies, and I'm like, when are they ever going to make something that I love as much as Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark? And when I saw this, that's how I felt. I was like, oh, wow, there is one of these movies that I think these guys are going to be watching 30 years from now. And I mean, you articulated it right. I mean, I think that was that feeling that everyone kind of grasps onto with this. So in terms of bringing James onto this, Kevin, I think we talked a little bit about this before. I think you guys, and you especially, have had an amazing knack for marrying filmmakers to the properties on this. And it's amazing, like when I saw You, Me, and Dupree, if you had told me that those guys would direct one of the best action movies ever made, I would have been like, no, I don't know about that. But like, I mean, it's amazing how you sort of like found these guys and sort of tied them together. What was your process on this, and what led you to James?
Well, as he already said, Jeremy Latcham and Jonathan Schwartz. Jonathan, who's producing Captain Marvel right now as we speak. Jeremy is producer at Fox on a movie that comes out in a few months, in October, I think. And there's a relatively big search. They meet a lot of people and look at a lot of people. And there were a handful of people that we met with for Guardians, many of whom went on to do other big movies and hadn't necessarily done big movies before that. And when they had this meeting with James, and I think when James then called back after this stuck in traffic moment.
That night I called.
Yeah.
I wrote, I think, and said,
Yeah.
I got it.
That was a big point, and it was like, we think they really were excited about James enough, and it showed the level of commitment he had, that he was willing to fly to Wilmington, North Carolina, to have this meeting. And it was initially to direct. It wasn't necessarily to write. It was to direct. We had a script, and it wasn't perfect, but it was these characters, and it was a similar structure. The Star Wars angle, I've talked about this a little bit. There was a thing in the script. There was an idea early on that we wouldn't reveal that Peter Quill was human from Earth until the middle of the movie. You remember this in the draft? It was later in the movie, and he had a bag or something, and the bag fell over, and Gamora leans out of frame and then leans back up into frame and is holding a Darth Vader action figure. Oh. And I remember thinking how crazy it would be to be in the middle of a science fiction movie and then suddenly see a Darth Vader action figure. And I remember thinking this would be the best Star Wars action figure cameo since E.T. James had a better idea, which involved a Walkman and music and a soundtrack. And that is what also transformed the entire movie. And I always bring it up, being interviewed like this, that he said, I have some ideas, I want to redo an outline. And Jeremy and I said, okay, well, all right, well, we have a script, but okay, let's let him do an outline and pray it's good. Because if it's not good, then our director that we want to hire has written something that isn't right, and that'll be a big headache, which does happen sometimes. That did not happen this time. And the moment that I got this treatment that he sent over, and it had a picture of a 1980 whatever Sony Walkman. And even before I turned the page, I went, oh, this is it. That's such a better connection to Earth and to humanity in this big science fiction film. And then I turned the page, and it was a great outline.
Yeah, James, you want to talk about that? Because I think the music is such an amazing part of this movie, and the nostalgia and the idea of the Walkman like brings such heart to it. Where did that come from?
Desperation. I think there was a couple scripts actually, and so there's a few different scripts. And the day that I signed on, and I had read a treatment that was pretty good. I thought it was in the right direction by a guy named Brian Lynch. And then I got the script by someone, a different person, which on the day that I signed on to do the movie, that I wasn't that pleased with, and I thought it was kind of a step down from where it had been. So I kind of freaked out, because we actually were on a, not...
That was a script based on the outline you had read?
It wasn't, it was, I forgot. What happened? Okay, here's what happened. So I won't use names. All right. So Brian. So There was the original script, which didn't
That's
work.
you literally just used the name.
What? Well, Brian did. Brian's the reason I did the movie. So like
Brian Lynch wrote Minions.
Yeah, he did a really.
He's a very talented writer.
There was an original script I didn't like that, then another script I didn't like that so much, and then a lot of people said no to doing the movie, and I wasn't going to say yes because I read the script, and then they gave me but I think it's going to go more in this direction, and they showed me Brian Lynch's treatment, and Brian Lynch's treatment was great, and it wasn't like what the movie ended up being, but it was like a really well done version of a really kind of more what you would think of as your normal Marvel movie at this time. And I thought, wow, that's really good. And so I'm waiting for the draft to be finished because they said they're working on the draft now. And then I get the draft the day I sign my contract. And it was a different writer who wasn't Brian Lynch and who didn't get credit. And then I read the script and it wasn't very good. And sorry, but it was hard to read. And I freaked out. And so I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had just committed to doing the movie, and I really wanted to do the movie. I was excited about doing the movie, but I thought this Brian Lynch script was coming in, and so I just was desperate, and I went and I started writing down ideas, and somehow I got lucky, like really, sometimes I've been writing volume 3 for a year straight, every day, practically. In this place, we had to start shooting in like 6 months or something, and so I sat down and right away I had this idea of the Walkman, and everything kind of then grew from there with the mom and the hand holding and all of that, and that's where my draft came in. But again, I always thought that I would probably do a draft that was like dialogue and action, which is what I would get hired to do anyway on other movies. But I didn't think I was going to write the screenplay.
Well, let's talk about. I mean, one of the reasons I love this movie is I love the characters and I love the cast. And Sarah, you've been part of all of these, and you were telling me outside that you cast Brie Larson, who's Captain Marvel, 3 years ago. So what is your process? And a lot of times when you cast these things, like you have no script, you might not. In that case, like you didn't even know who the directors were at that point. What is your process when you cast these films?
This is going to be an interesting experience because I don't talk a lot about Marvel casting, but I figured with Kevin sitting right, you can just kick me or elbow me if there's something.
You can let people know we cast Chris Pratt as Star-Lord.
Okay, thank you. That's about it. There, I'm done.
You can tell how you tricked me into casting
you
Chris.
can tell it. That's
Let's talk about that. We'll get to that in a second because I hear there's a great story.
In general, I think everything stems from Kevin's idea. If the director's not on board, we talk creatively about what the movie can be, and then it's following the director's vision. How, particularly with Guardians, how do we combine all of the qualities that Star-Lord needed? How do we find that? And with any of them, and it's a long search often. I mean, and some of these things, like you said, we don't necessarily have a script. With Spider-Man was another one where we had to cast someone a year before they were going to shoot, and so it's always a different process, and it's a thoughtful process. I think if we're lucky and we get it right, it seems very natural, like of course that person's playing the part, but behind the scenes there's really a tremendous amount of work that goes in, often a year or longer, often 1,000 people or more are seen. There's a lot of thought and discussion and readings and more readings. And that's really illustrated with Guardians because we had kind of an idea of what we were aiming for, but it was hard to find the right person. And I had seen people for months. We had tests. We kind of came out of that scratching. We had nobody, and it had to be perfect. I mean, that's my goal. It has to exceed everyone's expectations. It has to be the most perfect person to play the part. So we were really in the thick of it. And still looking after about 4 months, at least 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, well, I was watching this, like to me, like Chris Pratt in this movie was like watching Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones for the first time. You're like, oh my God, like who's this guy who's instantly like a major movie star? And you were telling me outside that not only James didn't think he was right, but Chris also didn't want to do it. So do you guys want to tell this story?
I mean, well, you know, one of the great things about Kevin as a producer is he really does not settle for anything less. And if you really want to know the number one reason, there are two reasons why the Marvel movies are in general so much better than your average movies. Why I think. One is that, you know, Kevin just has a really, really good eye for the basics of stories and entertaining people and adds that to every movie. But the second reason is he pushes people way harder than other people do, and they push themselves harder than others do. And so we did a lot of screen tests of actors for Star-Lord. And I remember walking out of like maybe the second set of screen tests or something, and we had seen like, you know, 15, we had screen tests of like 15 guys. And I'm going, I remember that night lying sick in bed because I didn't think we had found the right person. But I know what studio execs are like, and they're going to latch on to somebody and be like, oh yeah, we want this person or we want that person. Because we saw good people. We didn't see anybody that was just perfect for the role. And I went in the next day like just ready to be defeated. And Kevin's like, I don't think we found the right guy yet. We got to keep looking. And that's really what it's like throughout the whole process. So Sarah kept trying to get me to see Chris Pratt. And I'm like, what, fat guy from Parks and Rec? I don't think so. I'm like, he's fat. And she's like, well, no, he really got in shape for Zero Dark 30. I'm like, yeah, but since then he also got fat again. But really, I didn't, you know, it was more, I thought he was goofy. Like I had seen him in one scene in Parks and Rec. It wasn't a show I watched. But I remember seeing him in one scene in an office where things were falling around. It was goofy, and he was getting hit by stuff. And I'm like, that guy? He's stupid. So I kept saying no. And then one day, she tricked me because she said she didn't, but she did. She tricked me because I went into the office to see some other actors that I had okayed. And then all of a sudden, oh, here's Chris Pratt. And I'm like, okay, I guess I got to see him read. And so we went in and we watched him read, and this is no lie. I've said this story a million times, and it's 100% true. Within 20 seconds of him auditioning, I'm sitting here, and Sarah was sitting back up on that second level up there. Yeah. And I turned around and I said, he's the guy. And he was. We knew it. Yeah. I knew it immediately. He was the guy.
Yeah. What scene, was this scene from the movie? What did he read?
He read the scene with Drax's finger to the throat means death, and then he which then ended up being one of the hardest scenes to edit in the movie. And then he also did, honestly, the other scene that was hardest to edit, which was the love scene with him and Gamora out on the steps and the dancing scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, what was it about Chris? I mean, he's obviously so amazing and perfect in this, but what was it about him that you felt like, okay, this is really the guy when you're hitting resistance saying, no, it's really not?
Well, he had auditioned for us for something else years earlier, and I think I can say for Captain America, and it wasn't a fit there, but there was something there that was kind of had heart and had a certain nobility and earnestness and authenticity. So I started watching him. So that's our job as casting directors. So then I started tracking him. I was like, he's interesting, and so, you know, I saw Moneyball, I saw Zero Dark 30, I saw Her, and I had him in my head, and I knew that he could be funny, which is something that James, he really needed to have that humor. And like with Downey and Iron Man, you're also looking for an actor who can embody the character in a way that it takes flight. Like James said, we saw good actors, people gave good readings, but no one lifted it into a sort of magical place. And so as we kept reading, initially Chris didn't want anything to do with the project either. He had put on weight. James was right, he didn't really see himself as a leading man, he wasn't comfortable being taped, and so he wouldn't audition, and that's where I thought, all right, if he's not interested, we have to go on. We had one round of screen tests, we had another round of screen tests, and then I think I was in the place that you were in after you read the script. After we scratched the second time, it was desperation. And I really started almost stalking him to get him to come in, because I couldn't get him out of my head, and there wasn't anybody else really wonderful. And so finally he said yes, and that's when James said, no, I don't want to see him. And I think I really just timed it so that he would come in after the session. Maybe we ran late. He was walking in, you were walking out.
No one believes
like that.
It is interesting. You've heard the word desperation twice tonight already. Desperation is honest to God, it's a great motivator. And it is, you know, you're desperate because you've got a release date. You're desperate because you want this movie to go. You're desperate because you need to find the right person. That's exactly what happened when Sarah cast Thor, and we did a number of screen tests before, and Chris Hemsworth had come and gone, and we still hadn't found anybody, and Sarah brought him back.
He had been sick the first time around, and it just hadn't clicked.
His brother Liam auditioned as well in that time. And on Captain America, we crossed, I think I talked about this the other week, we crossed off Chris Evans early on and kept moving and kept going, couldn't find anybody, did a lot of screen tests, and Sarah started to go, well, remember those names you crossed off? Let's start looking at them. So desperation, remember, it's a good thing.
It's never being happy. It's never, in all the years, I think you were kind of happy the day after Infinity War came out. You said, I'm not feeling totally miserable. I said, how are you feeling? You said, not totally miserable, or something like that. And I'm like, oh, he's walking on clouds today. and we have a terrible thing because I go in and he's like, and you sat down with me after the first movie came out, and you said, all right, now, everybody loves the movie, it's got great reviews, but we can't rest on our laurels. We can't, just keep going because everybody loves everything. We have to still try to, do a good movie. And I said, I feel like a total failure now with this movie. I wanted to make the biggest movie of all time, and I failed. So, and you're like, now you're talking. That's what I love. That's you're speaking my language. Complete just beating ourselves up. Success.
Let's talk about some of the other characters. Something else was unexpected. Bradley Cooper's obviously one of the best actors around, but when Bradley Cooper got cast in this, and he's doing like kind of a New York accent, like where did the idea of him come from? Because he's so amazing, and I think as James said, like to me he's such the heart of the movie and stuff. And watching it again tonight, the scene where he's drunk and sort of breaking down is so emotional, and it makes you really care about him and this group of people. And obviously, if you didn't have the right voice, that wasn't going to work at all. So, what was your process in finding a voice for this?
Can I say?
Yeah.
Yeah. We
You don't have to ask me every time. This movie is old.
It's all done.
Talk about it.
It's all done.
Yeah.
It's out. So again, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. Hopefully we get it right and it seems great, but we listen to hundreds of voices. When we were going about it, again, we started with character and just trying to absorb everything James wanted from
Yeah,
his
and
character.
he was written as Joe Pesci. He was written to be, that's what he was, not exactly like Joe Pesci, but similar to that type of character. That's who he is.
Anybody remember Joe Pesci?
Yeah.
All right.
He's coming back, finally. The
Why?
Irishman.
In what?
In The Irishman, Scorsese, De Niro, Pacino.
Cool.
It took him forever. Apparently he invested in real estate, was super rich, so he had no incentive to do it. And it took De Niro years of trying to convince him, and he finally agreed to come back. So anyway.
So then we found an image of Rocket that was very early. Remember the circle?
Mm-hmm.
And we pulled hundreds of voice tapes. And this is, it was.
It was a voice that Sarah would link up the voices of different people talking over this really poorly animated rocket, water. And then we'd see one tape of Clint Eastwood talking over.
Yeah, and we tried to find a sort of manic monologue because we knew where he had to go. But that helped us discern what sort of vocal qualities we wanted, what the emotional content should be, and help narrow down the process. But then again, and Bradley had been considered for something else, so we were coming full circle with Rocket. And
Did you audition, or were you just thinking about it?
he didn't audition. We just we went through, I don't remember if Silver Linings was out yet. We'd go through, and we do this fairly frequently, sort of go through an actor's whole body of work and find different monologues and different excerpts, because it's not just a voiceover role, it's really an acting role. And so we needed to be able to show emotional range and different pitches and different qualities. You could take a lot of different speeches and it would sound like completely different people. So we tried to find the right sample for Rocket. And then even though it was a very rudimentary drawing, just walking in a circle, it was a pretty great fit. Right?
And there's another part of that whole story, which is that we didn't give it to Bradley. We didn't offer it to him until after we had done the San Diego Comic-Con screening. So we had actually had a fair amount of people who, because we don't give the screenplays out to most people. Every once in a while, you offer it to a really big star, and you let them read the screenplay, and some Marvel guy goes and sits outside their door waiting for them to read it. But for the most part, you just offer it to people, and they have to say yes or no, and they can't read the script. Nobody knew who the Guardians of the Galaxy were. Nobody knew what this thing was, and it was, it was just so a fair amount of people said no to us, and then we did a San Diego Comic-Con screening, which we did. We put together 12 days into shooting, but it changed everything for us. So all of a sudden, it was like the talk of LA, and at that point, then we had the clout to go say, hey, Bradley, do you want to do Rocket? Because I'm not sure if he would have said yes
No.
before that.
People really didn't know what the movie was.
Well, so two of your lead characters are completely computer generated. What was that like to shoot, and how did you deal with that on set?
Well, I mean, I think most people know Sean Gunn is half of Rocket. He is, most of the acting is Sean. It's especially in this movie, actually. It's Sean's acting, it's Sean's facial expressions, and a lot of it is Sean's line reading. So Sean is Rocket, and he's thought of as a member of the Guardians every day when we're on set, and is treated as an equal cast member by everybody else. And then once we go to press, he gets thrown in a bin somewhere. No, that's not true. He's getting, listen, Kraglund's pretty cool. So his character he plays, Kraglund, is a much bigger part of Guardians 2. For Groot, we had a guy walking around with a Groot hat. That never seemed to know what was going on. Just walking around with a Groot hat. So that was a little bit harder. I got to say, Groot was the one, I knew exactly what Rocket was the whole way through filming, and I think we all did in large part because of Sean. Groot, we kind of would forget he was there, and then all of a sudden he started coming together, and believe it or not, this is completely true. I know Vin only says I am Groot 13 times in this movie, but he's as big of a part of Groot, if not bigger than Bradley is, because we tried a lot of different voices with Groot, and nothing came close to being right. And when he did it, when we put his voice in there, suddenly this character came to life. And then he became the favorite character in the movie. And it wasn't something that we really expected, because he came together little by little with the visual effects artists and Groot, with Vin, and yeah.
Well, let's talk about the opening. Like, I always feel when they say to writers too, it's like in your first 10 pages of a script or first 10 minutes of a movie, like if you can pull someone in, it's like, I think it's really hard to lose them. Like, you're invested, and you're like, and you'll go with it for a long way. I loved the first 10 minutes of this movie, or so, I don't know the exact number, but those two opening scenes are so different from each other, but like the opening is so emotional, and then to go to that onto an alien world, and we're like Indiana Jones going into a temple, but then music kicks in and he starts dancing his way through, just completely sets the tone for the entire movie. Do you want to talk about like how you decided to sort of open the movie in that sense, those two scenes?
I mean, I just think that is sort of my aesthetic. So I like those tonal shifts. I like seeing different parts of a person. I think it's, it was a fun way to intro the film. I always liked dance scenes and animated opening credits and things like that. And so I was excited to put all that stuff in, but it was really, really hard to get there. Like the thing that you're talking about that seems kind of natural, maybe when you watch the movie now, first of all, a lot of our test audience members didn't like it, even to the last day, when the test scores were getting pretty high. But it was disjointing for a lot of people. It was off-putting for a lot of people. For me, it always worked, but it took a long time to make it somewhat fluid.
We put the logo in between those two scenes late in the process to try to
Pretty
help,
late.
to
That
try
was
to
your
help that
idea.
transition.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was one of the things that did help a great deal. And there were a lot of things. Him traveling in the beginning was much longer. The dance scene even was a little bit longer, but then we almost did it too short for a while and had to make it longer again. But it was a long journey to make it somehow work.
One of the things I love so much about this movie is that, like a lot of first movies, I feel like are setting up a franchise where it's like the whole movie's set up for a more interesting sequel. And this doesn't feel like that at all. Like it feels like pretty quickly you're throwing these guys together. and they're part of the story, and they're sort of together, and it's a great movie on its own, as opposed to, oh my god, part 2 is gonna be awesome. Was that a concern? Was that something that you were going for and trying for?
I mean, I always think of making the best possible
Sure.
movie, so I would never even think about, setting up a franchise would always be secondary to making a great movie. That would be an afterthought if I had a possibility of doing something where I could set up a character that I think, oh, maybe, there's a little time when you see, when there's things with Yondu that you can tell that Yondu is a bigger character than he is in this movie. Because I loved the character of Yondu, and I knew where that story was going to go with him and Peter Quill. Spoiler, it's not so great. And then, so there's things in there where you can see that, so I would set up that little stuff in there, but for the most part it was about the movie. And definitely the hardest thing about putting the movie together was the first 20 minutes or so, because we had so many characters we needed to set up to get, this is who this guy is. This is the talking tree. This is a raccoon. This is the evil bald sister. This is, and we had to set them all up so quickly that it was very, very difficult to get that first 20 minutes to a place that was watchable.
Let's talk about some of the actors. Dave Bautista is amazing in this, and I love the character of Drax. I didn't read the comics, but the idea that he comes from a literal planet where they don't understand metaphors, was that something in the comics, or is that something that you brought to this?
No, he's not. Everything about him is different from the comics. Yeah, but he looks. He didn't even look. I guess he looks a little different in the comics. But yeah, the whole sort of, shall we say, dumb. He's sort of dumb. The dumb, sort of literal-minded, very, very simple, very earnest, completely on the surface. Sort of strikingly violent and amoral in certain respects, but also with a great sense of honor and dignity that the other characters, really don't necessarily have. That's something that's from the character, and he was as hard to cast as Chris.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about, Sarah. I mean, you needed someone with that physicality, but also had such an amazing sense of comic timing. How did you go about finding?
I think we kind of found him as we went along, and I think it all